UN independent expert did say on the adjournment of all human rights by older persons that, and we'll quote, "We need to stand up now for older persons' rights. Pervasive gerontophobia, the fear, that's the fear of age-related self-degeneration and death, not just prejudice against older people, discrimination, and ultimately the denial of human rights in older age," unquote. So how do we protect, care, and support the elderly in the midst of a pandemic such as COVID-19? How can the elderly stay safe in these perilous times? And how can medical attention reach them for existing health conditions, while, of course, staying free of the coronavirus and staying at home? I am Claire Dilabo Abdul Razak, welcoming you to the program. Good morning. Kingsley.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Claire to also welcome you to this edition of the program. As always, we are transmitting on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're right here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital city.
Our conversation this morning is, of course, on COVID-19 and care for our aged and the elderly. So let me quickly introduce our guests who are already here in the studio. Let me start with Senator Eze Ajoku, who is President, Coalition of Societies for the Rights of Older Persons in Nigeria, Kotropin. Thank you very much, Senator, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I also like to introduce a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, and that's Dr. Omokaro. She's the Executive Director, Dave Omokaro Foundation, and also convener and co-chair, Stakeholder Group on Aging Africa. Dr. Omokaro, thank you once again. Good to see you.
All right. Also with us here in the Abuja studios is Mrs. Victoria Onu. She's the founder and CEO of Grace Nursing Care Center here in Abuja. It's a pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you.
And from our Benin Network Center, we're being joined by Obehi Akoria, who is a professor of medicine at the School of Medicine, University of Benin, and a consultant geriatrician and deputy chair of the Medical Advisory Committee of the University of Benin Teaching Hospital. Professor Obehi Akoria, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria. Thanks for having me here.
All right, so let's begin this conversation by contextualizing it. I mean, part of the information out there is that one of the high-risk groups in terms of the susceptibility of infection usually will be persons who are said to be advanced in age, the elderly. And that what does this mean, therefore, for us as a people who have the elderly living amongst us in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much. We are concerned about the vulnerability of our elderly population in the face of the current pandemic. Even before now, the elderly have been identified as a vulnerable group in this country for many reasons. As part of aging, there's what we call immunosenescence, which has to do with the fact that the immune system is not quite as good as it was earlier in life. This is even in the absence of disease. The meaning is that head to head, an older adult is less likely to mount up adequate immunity to fight off disease than a younger adult. Fast forward to COVID-19, our elderly persons are vulnerable on many fronts. Age is a factor that we cannot influence, so they are vulnerable by virtue of their age and reduced immunity. Our older persons are also vulnerable on several other fronts that impact directly or indirectly on their health status. For example, access to care, access to resources like money. Poverty is very pervasive, and there is a vicious cycle between poverty and disease and outcomes of disease. There is also the challenge of ageism, which we describe as systematic discrimination against anyone because the age is a particular number. In the face of the current pandemic, there is the possibility, even though we may not come up front with it, that older persons are likely to suffer from discrimination. It is not uncommon to hear our people say, "He don't try. At least he has lived to be so and so age." So that is another potential source of vulnerability for older persons in Nigeria, where the value that is placed on a life that is aged 80 may not be the same value that is placed on the life of someone who is aged 40 or 30.
All right, thank you, Professor Akore, for your opening remarks. Again, let's throw the ball to Dr. Ememomokoro. Eleanor, of course, we wanted to start with you. Thank you for your understanding. I just, again, like you to, speak to the question that Kingsley raised. But I would like you to explain, because there are, studies that have shown that rather than the aged or the elderly, being more prone to infection, that the younger, ones, because of the probability of their physical movement, they are mobile, they are actively mobile. Yeah. So they are at greater risk. So what places the elderly, at a greater risk? Is it behavioral issues or biological issues?
Thank you very much. And I thank the professor for giving that context. She is the one that is the medical doctor. Yeah. But I think we have to distinguish between being a carrier of the disease, being asymptomatic, contracting the disease, and the actual effect of the disease, what the disease does to your body. As she said, disproportionately, older persons are known to have comorbidities. Non-communicable diseases affect older persons disproportionately. And because of the existence of the preconditions, then you find that an older person who contracts COVID-19 stands, the chance of being adversely, critically diseased, sick, whereas the younger person, can be sick mildly, can be moderate, but may not be as severe. And I also want to say here that it is not strictly only older persons who have pre-existing conditions. So the younger person, 30 years, may have pre-existing conditions and maybe on some immunosuppressive drugs. That younger person also stands the risk as severe as the older persons. But unfortunately, because of the numbers, we have seen in internationally comparable data, the numbers from Europe to the US, even now to Africa. Although Nigeria, we still haven't gotten to that disaggregation of the death tools. We will see that older persons, have, like the report showed, 5 times the global average from age 80 years. But I also want to put it in the context. When we talk about older persons, we find older persons in different scenarios, in different contexts, because when we say older persons, and the United Nations says 60 years and above, there's that tendency to think that there are no variations. You also have older persons that have strong immune systems, and they are, they grow healthy and they are ready to go.
One recovered just recently, I heard.
Exactly.
A 92-year-old.
Exactly. And then you have older persons, who are even on the front line fighting. You see even doctors being recalled, who are retired and being recalled, on the front line fighting. So older persons are a variety of persons. So this is to disabuse minds from stigmatization, and older persons, you're weak, you're vulnerable, you're that. So that is the ageism she was talking about. And then I also want to put it within the context of development. You know that we declared this year, a decade, this was supposed to be the window into the decade of healthy aging. Because now the globe wanted now to concentrate on functional capacity of older persons, healthy aging. And then, of course, this was also to be the year where we are supposed to accelerate action on sustainable development goals. And now, behold, COVID-19. So COVID-19, I want to say here, has exposed the fact that there have been exclusion and inequality. Focus had not been put on non-communicable diseases and access to health, like she said, access to nutrition and hunger.
We're going to pause here and then return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's bring in now Senator Eze Ajoku. Senator Eze Ajoku, but give us your own feel of what's playing out under the radar of the pandemic that we are seeing. What's been the national experience with the elderly and COVID-19?
Well, the national experience, as you can see from all that has been said, and from the doctor, from Dr. Makaro, is the fact that the older persons are at the highest risk at this point in time. If you look at the number of recoveries, you can count 1 or 2 older persons who recovered. The rest are younger people. If you look at the death rate in Kano, in other places, it's more of older persons. And like your first question, you see, the older persons most times are at home. The mobile youths go out there and bring the infection home and interact with the older persons. They can recover easily, but the older persons don't. Because you find that the older persons are not carriers of this disease. So most times when people try to stigmatize older persons, they are not the carriers. Someone brings it home to them. Everybody is nervous now about the export of Amajuris. Some of them have COVID to other parts of Nigeria. The older persons at home are getting worried. What will happen in our community when these Amajuris infect people like they've done in Kano? You find that what will happen is that it is the older person who suffers most. He has little or no chances of recovery. And when you look at what is happening in Italy, in New York, they are making decisions on who to treat and not who to treat because they are overwhelmed. We don't want a situation in this country when the value of the life of an older person no longer counts, and you now make a decision to treat a younger person on the assumption that the older person has lived his life. But that's not true. I'm an older person because in a few months now I'll be 73. My mother is an older person, she's 101. Many of us are still contributing. It is the older persons who are doing the farm work in most areas. And therefore, we shouldn't allow the older persons to be wiped out. Nigeria should begin to step up, like she has said. Take actions. 1, to begin to treat the communicable diseases of older persons, which creates the lower immunity. Begin to provide them drugs, discounted drugs for treatment like they did for HIV. The point is that older persons have never come into the numbers equation in this country. They've been discriminated by policies, by laws, by everything. And so you find a situation where right now the COVID-19 is exposing the neglect, complete neglect of the older citizens.
Okay, let me pause you because you are fast forwarding to a very critical point. Let me also bring Mrs. Victoria Ono, who is founder Grace Nursing Care Center. You have a direct contact with, of course, the elderly and the aged. You've heard now, it's not just the elderly that have underlying, medical conditions. Even the young ones, age 40, 30, and also do have, comorbidities. So everyone is predisposed to contracting, the virus. But my question is, what do you think makes the aged and the elderly, specifically susceptible? He has mentioned discrimination. Could lack of care be a prime reason?
I think by the time a lot of people get to that stage where they're seen as older persons, some of them are subjected to other people's care. They can't take care of themselves anymore. And They need the help of others. So unlike most of us, we can do things by ourselves, but because they need carers, and those carers go out, they're the ones that, you know, interact with people, they're the ones that go to market. The tendency is that they will bring these things home. They will bring the COVID home. So they are more susceptible. Those of us that can take care of ourselves can decide whether we'll be locked in, whether, you know, who you want to touch. But the older persons don't have a choice. Somebody has to take care of them. Somebody has to bathe them. Somebody has to take off their clothes and all that. So there is no social distance when it comes to care of the older person. So I think that really makes them vulnerable and subject to infection.
The fact that you cannot really implement social distance, you know, when it comes to the aged, care of the aged.
Yes.
That's a big prime factor.
It's a big factor, yes.
I would like us to return to Professor Obehi Akore in our Benin Network Center. Professor Obehi, yes, we have seen in terms of your various explanations how vulnerable the elderly could be under the current circumstances of COVID-19. But what can the elderly themselves do to lower their vulnerabilities or otherwise lower their risk of exposure to the coronavirus?
Okay, thank you very much. Before I talk about what the elderly can do, I need to clarify on an issue. I like the fact that you have emphasized that the stereotype about aging having to do with disease needs to be erased, because as we can see, there are a lot of elderly people who are active and contributing to society. However, aging by itself is associated with physiological changes that do not necessarily manifest as disease. There is a delicate balance between those physiological changes and the manifestation of disease, and that depends on exposure. So one of the things the older person can do is reduce the risk of exposure to the virus. So whether you are physically fit, as a lot of the older persons I know are, or whether you are living with hypertension or diabetes or any other condition for that matter, the universal precautions that have been put out for everyone applies to every older person. Sanitation, hand hygiene, frequent hand washing with clean water and soap. It's not easy to say don't touch your face, but as much as we can, we should avoid touching our faces.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Akore, Professor Akore. Mrs. Ono, you run a care center here in Abuja, and I want to believe you also, I don't know if you do have, you know, some elderly ones amongst them, and if you do, what is your messaging template to them?
Okay, actually we had a few of them, and just about the time that this, there was this news that brought about nursing homes, some of them came and took their loved ones away. For those ones that are in the home, we educate them so that they can take kindly to the fact that they can't have visitors from, you know, outside.
What are you telling them?
We tell them about COVID. We tell them about social distancing. We tell them about the fact that they are wherever they are coming from, we are not sure that they are not infected, but that we need to protect them, and that it is better that they are protected because they could, you know, they don't have the capacity to resist as much as the young ones that are coming to them. For one particular person, it was difficult for her, for him, to understand why the grandson cannot hug him. And I happened to be around that day, so I had to tell him that It's just something we have to do to protect him, and that he should help us. And then the person that came to visit him said, so does it mean that Papa cannot carry my child? You know, it was heart-wrenching. It wasn't easy, but we had to maintain that, you know, that distance.
The NBS, the National Bureau of Statistics,
Yes.
released its latest figures of
Yes,
poverty,
poverty.
saying that there are about 82 million poor Nigerians.
Yes.
Are the elderly captured in this category, so that when you disaggregate it, then maybe as a policy implication, we might not know who to target? Because what you keep hearing mostly from policymakers, which is understandable, is say provide jobs for our teeming youths.
Exactly.
Is it possible that we also have teeming elderly people?
Exactly.
All right.
So I want to say, unfortunately, that the way data is sourced, the demand for surveys in Nigeria, you know, you have to, NBS, you know, surveys on demand, and it's the government that places that demand. And if you look at national surveys before now, national surveys never really captured older persons. I know specifically national surveys on malaria didn't capture older persons. National surveys on well-being did not capture older persons. And when we, you know, approach NBS to look for any kind of data on older persons, say, Madam, unfortunately, we can't lie to you. We do not have. So now, apart from that, now the presentation of this data on poverty, most cases, except maybe if you approach and they can now, you know, they are not presented in disaggregated form. It's a national aggregate summary. They say, oh, 82 million Nigerians are poor. Who are the 82 million Nigerians on sex and gender and age? So that is the question you asked.
That's right.
Unfortunately, I don't know whether that
No.
is possible.
No.
Even the social investment program.
No, it doesn't
If you
happen.
approach the social investment program, the household, the poor households,
yes, it's households.
disaggregated,
It's
you will
households.
not have. So
Except some social imagination, I would
Yes.
put it that way, to say that if you were to go to a community, they would know those who are very poor in the community,
Yeah.
and therefore you
and that's
isolate
how
them.
the social investment office, that's how they identify the poor households. It's the
poor
community. They
households.
work with the community to say this household is very poor,
Yes.
and they means tests, and then they capture their biodata.
Distinguished, let's have your opinion also on this issue of, you know, sources of anxiety, and probably how you think, you know, that can also be addressed. Do you share MM's
I
views?
totally share everything MM has said. But I want to add that anxiety for a lot of older persons also could be caused by the kind of information they get. Now, we were discussing before, you said that if older persons that are knowledgeable are able to share the information with the older persons, they will believe more the person from their category. And I think a lot of older persons are doing something about it. And that's why we wanted it coordinated through some agencies or individuals or in a community-based structure that could do that. I, for one, I have done jingle with my name. I am Seneteza Joko. I am one of you. I'm an older person like you. This and this is what I do, you know. And it plays regularly on a radio station that I have influence over in Imo, saying I'm an older person, this is what I do. Look, today is the third day I'm leaving my house in the last 5 weeks. Second time was last week when we were here, and then another one was just where I went to sort out something. So I've learned to stay at home because I know I have underlying issues, and I don't want to take the risk. And a lot of older persons who are educated, who are knowledgeable, are protecting themselves. They are using the mask, they are washing hands, they are observing social distancing, and they are staying at home and using sanitizer appropriately.
Distinguished Senator Eze Ajoku, President, Coalition of Societies for the Rights of Older Persons in Nigeria. We are glad to have you with us. Mrs. Victoria Ono, CEO, Grace Nursing Care Center. Project Coordinator, Coalition of Societies for the Rights of Older Persons in Nigeria. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us from Good Morning Nigeria. Let me also appreciate Dr. M.M. Omokaro, Executive Director, Dave Omokaro Foundation, convener and co-chair, stakeholder group of Aging in Africa. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And from our Benin Network Center, we had Professor Obey Korea, Professor of Medicine, School of Medicine, University of Benin, and Consultant Geriatrician and Deputy Chair, Medical Advisory Committee, University of Benin Teaching Hospital. Prof, we appreciate your presence today on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, so that does it for us today and indeed for the week on Good Morning Nigeria. As always, we appreciate your tuning in. The program returns on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, stay safe, stay well, and have a lovely weekend. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Dilabo Abdul Razak. Also stay safe, and by the grace of God, we'll see you again on Monday. Bye-bye.